The concept of urban heritage was first mentioned by Italian architect Gustavo Giovannoni. He analyzed the shift from historical architecture to the development of a modern urban space. According to this concept, legacies are closely related to the composition of a city. Therefore, the preservation of these heritages is very important for the development of a city in a modern context. According to experts, the preservation of urban architecture heritage brings about both cultural value and economic benefits. A city with many architectural heritages has an identity and great significance to attract economic activities, political culture, and directly generate benefits. The task of an urban architectural heritage conservation project will therefore have to mobilize financial and technical resources and use those resources to preserve heritages for the development of new construction projects. This is also a typical topic in a roundtable conference between Vietnamese and Italian enterprises recently held in Hanoi. The event took place at Sofitel Legend Metropole Hanoi, one of the typical examples of successful reuse of historic architecture in Vietnam.
Greetings from Vietnam on VTC10 Net Việt. In today's show, let's talk about the cities for futures and the heritage preservation. And the guest speaker in our program today is Mr. Luigi, an expert from Italy. So thank you for joining us. What is in your impression on the architecture here in Vietnam?
It is a very complex situation, especially from an urban and architectural point of view, because you can see, at least in Hanoi, but I think there is quite a cross-section of the country, that you have many different environments from an architectural point of view. One is, of course, the old quarter, which is a mix of colonial and also typical home, local typologies mixed together in a system of very complex, narrow and compact streets and lanes. Then you have, of course, the colonial heritage, especially the French one. Then you have the ordinary homes for the people, which are in the outside and maybe sometimes some position in the center. And then you have the villages around. There is a huge amount of heritage still, in spite of the destruction happened because of many reasons, the war and also the necessity to expand, etc.
So this hotel, the Metropole Hotel, is also very well-known landmark here in Hanoi, and this building has also been renovated. So what is your comment on the architecture and the renovation of this hotel?
Appreciating the interior, and I think that it was a very good work. It was a very good work. This painting, this is a white building, no? Typical, colonial, okay. But then, if you see the real thing, an old building painted in whitewash, it's sort of the texture, the materiality is so subtle, so more refined, because it's not regular, it's sort of transparent, it gives you the idea that the building is sort of breathing, if you know what I mean. It's much more interesting. This restoration was done very well, in my opinion, but the materiality lacks the sort of refinement that you can have only if you have craftsmen and the right products in an endless connection with their past. And this happens only in Italy. So one of the reasons why I would like to do this master, going back to the master, is that my intention will be not only to bring people like myself, but to bring and give demonstration hands-on, to bring my craftsmen, because they have 500 years development behind their back. And they possess a technique which is lost everywhere else.
So how can you share the use of the heritage buildings in Italy?
We are trying to, this is just the first stone thrown in the lake, if you know what I mean. In the sense, it's the first experience. But what we would like to do, possibly through other institutions, namely the Embassy of Italy to Vietnam, and the UNESCO, and my university, the University of Venice. What we shall try to do is to start a research which should include also some pilot case, real hands-on experience, to research on building on the built environment as a viable, more economical, more clever, more sustainable, more interesting way to develop, to densificate a city without enlarging its boundaries, without eating up virgin soil. I'm not against new developments, I'm not against high rises. They are necessary probably. But as I said in the lecture, Hong Kong has a lesser density than old Paris, which means that the so-called modernistic typology are not so efficient after all. So actually, the traditional urban texture, the traditional urban pattern is more efficient. So there are a lot of good reasons to have the new development with their high rise, maybe, that I don't like, but who cares?
In recent years, with the internationalization process, the theme of cultural heritage is increasingly mentioned at important events. Hanoi, like many other Asian cities, is facing challenges in both developing and preserving cultural identity. The best approach involves preserving the identity and origin of historical buildings through reuse and adaptation to modern needs.
The building can be transformed and readapted to modern use. I was showing before one example. Can be even transformed in a shopping center, actually. So it depends how it's been done. But there is several cases, several case studies that successful intervention of heritage buildings that either they stay as a residential or they become something else like an hotel or becoming a shopping center, a museum. I mean, the function is not really what is matter. What is matter how to intervene to keep the original character of the building and the culture of the suburb area, basically.
Chúng ta biết là thành phố Hà Nội thì đã quan tâm đến cái giá trị di sản của nó cũng khá lâu rồi. Từ những năm 1993 thì đã có những cái bàn thảo rất nhiều về là bảo tàng tồn phố cổ, bảo tồn phố Pháp. Vì lúc đó chúng ta cũng nhận thấy rằng là chúng ta đang ở trong một thành phố mà có một cái nguồn tài nguyên rất lớn, đấy là chính là thành phố lịch sử. Thành phố được tích lũy bởi những cái câu chuyện của nó và kể cả những cái hiện trạng về vật lý của nó, những công trình kiến trúc, những đường phố và những cái lối sống và văn hóa trong cái đô thị này. Do vậy là cái việc mà tìm tòi ra bên ngoài là rất quan trọng. Và chúng ta lần này thì có hội thảo với các bạn Ý. Đây là cũng một cái quá trình mà hợp tác khá kiên định. Đây là lần thứ 3 trò chuyện về di sản. Chúng ta đặt vấn đề di sản thách thức giữa một cái quá trình phát triển. Cái chủ đề ngày hôm nay là thành phố di sản với tương lai. Do vậy là chúng ta cũng không nhìn nhận di sản như một cái bảo tàng khô cứng mà nó luôn luôn sống động và phát triển hướng lên phía trước.
According to experts in the field of urban development planning and heritage conservation, on the scale of urban areas in Vietnam, many urban heritage projects exist as valuable assets and become milestones for urban development, depending on the characteristics, location of the urban space, the context of heritage. The improvement can take place in many different ways with the participation of relevant departments and the community.
Hanoi is famous for the French architecture and also the old buildings. Can you share with us about your experience in designing and building the historical buildings that still preserve them?
But if we expand the notion of heritage to the notion of building on the built environment, building on the already built, which means that Alongside with the new development on virgin soil, there is also the possibility of reusing what we have and maybe densifying what we have, in the sense that you could probably pull down a 3-story building not particularly relevant and culturally important, and have a 5 building zone. So, because that will mean, A, you stay in the center. The center is already serviced by infrastructures. B, you are in a place that has got already a memory, that has got already a character, where people already feel at home. You do not need to build new roads, new infrastructure, new sewage, all the things that you have to do when you develop. And also, even if I'm not against development of new land, the city cannot be an endless sprawling entity, enlarging, eating up virgin agricultural soil, because after all we have to eat. And so if the agricultural soil is consumed, what are we going to eat in the future?
So what is your assessment on the role of the government in this regard?
The responsibility of every politician is to learn from the past and to use the past to imagine a future which is coordinated, which is a consequence, if not obvious, of the past, without replicating it. But this model of high-rise, of new developments, is already 100 years old. And it is an homologating model, meaning that it makes all the city look similar. When I am in the old quarter, I know that I am in Hanoi. When I am one of the new developments, I could be everywhere. I'm not in Hanoi. I mean, I could be in my country, in Milan, in the new parts. So there is nothing typical. When you do that, there is nothing typical. There is nothing Vietnamese. And the same thing is Sweden. If you go to a modern development in Sweden, you could be in Hanoi. But why? There's no reason. I mean, there's no reason to do that.
What is your expectation for the cooperation between Vietnam and Italy in architecture in the future?
This is a research that we would like to introduce, and we would like to do with the 2 universities. They have already signed a memorandum of understanding with us. So one is the National University of Civil Engineering, and the other one is the Architectural University of Hanoi. And Hanoi Architectural University, this is the right name. They have just signed the MOU, and a possible joint research on that, possibly with the help of the international money, international fund, will be that. Another thing that I have in mind, of which I'm already responsible, and is to we would like to launch a master course in Vietnam, where we shall teach local young professionals or graduate architects how to do restoration properly. It will be an Italian master, which means an European master. So it will give a title which is viable and recognized all over the world, especially in Europe, but all over the world. And it will be a foreign master. But it is tailored and intended, it will be tailored and intended for Vietnamese architects.
Once again, thank you for joining us and for your sharings today. And that's all we have for this episode of Truc Vietnam today. For comment and feedback, don't hesitate to write to us at trucvietnam@netvietttv.net. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.